Welcome to Module 2, Designing SARI Screening Area and Treatment Center. By the end of this lecture, you will be able to identify the basic principles and layout of a COVID-19 screening point for healthcare facilities, describe how to set up a SARI treatment center, and also be able to describe how to set up a SARI treatment center using tents. The lecture is organized in 3 different sections for easy understanding. Section 2A looks at basic principles and layout of a COVID-19 screening point for healthcare facilities. 2B, setting up a SARI treatment center, and 2C is about SARI treatment center in tents. Module 2A, Basic Principles and Layout of a COVID-19 Screening Point for Healthcare Facilities. Screening and clinical triage includes a system for assessing all patients at admission, allowing for early recognition of possible COVID-19 and immediate isolation of patients with suspected disease in an area separate from other patients. To facilitate the early identification of cases, establish a proper screening system at all different levels of a public health system to enable early detection of potential suspected cases. It should include temporary isolation capacity, referral ambulance, trained staff, protocols, and all needed supplies. Screening area can be set up in existing facilities, built as new construction, or using semi-permanent structures such as tents of different sizes. The proposed layout is based on the standard screening setting endorsed with proper infection prevention and control measures regarding ventilation. It describes the basic structural principles and essential services. 1. Patient entry. This is where the patient accesses the health facility. It is essential that all patients should pass through the triage. At this point, anybody arriving should receive a mask, perform hand hygiene, and be directed to the waiting room. The waiting room should be composed of different individual booths with separate entrances and exits and be completely open in order to allow good natural ventilation. 3. Toilets for patients, both male and female, should be nearby. Right from the waiting room, patients should access the screening area, which is divided into 2 zones, one for the patient and another for staff. This spatial separation allows staff to screen a patient without wearing any personal protective equipment. After the screening, patients can either be moved direct to the health facility if the case definition is not met, or be kept in a temporary isolation room while waiting for a referral towards a SARI treatment center. This is the representation of a flow as just described, with the patient here represented as the blue circle, moving from the entrance to the waiting room, accessing the screening area, and being addressed either to the health facility or to the temporary isolation room waiting for the referral. This is an example of a waiting room and screening area within a tent with a surface area of 100 square meters. Services are integrated in a single structure, but always following the same patient flow. It is worth mentioning that the spatial distance in the screening station can as well be replaced with a transparent surface such as glass or plexiglass in order to protect healthcare workers and rationalize the use of PPE. And here is an example of a screening area within a tent with a surface area of about 45 square meters. It lays on the same principle, only that due to the difference in size, waiting room and screening area are in different structures. Here is how a standard 45 square meter tent commonly used in emergency settings, is divided into 10 individual booths for patients waiting to access the screening area. Small tents allow more flexibility in terms of capacity. Thus, if required by the epidemiological situation, installing more of these smaller tents to increase the waiting room capacity or installing a second screening tent can easily be done. Tents to be used for screening and waiting rooms should be correctly installed in order to allow a clear and practical patient flow. Module 2B, setting up a SARI treatment center. A SARI treatment center should be set up as close as possible to the center of the outbreak. This is very important to reduce time for the sick to reach the facility the soonest for medical care. The treatment center could be set up next to an existing health facility, or choose to set it up a new place according to specific strategic reasons. However, you need to consider some of the construction requirements, such as enough space in case of future extensions and water source accessibility, the soil condition, and take into account the prevailing winds for the smoke and odors. Basically, some of the rationale behind principal layout of a SARI treatment center are provision of medical care as soon as possible, even prior to laboratory confirmation, in order to avoid medical conditions worsening. Consider the different levels of risk represented by a patient with specific medical conditions, such as severe cases needing aerosol generating procedure such as aspiration, intubation, bronchoscopy, etc. Ensure a clear demarcation and separation from patient and staff areas to reduce the risk of healthcare workers and allow optimal use of the personal protective equipment. Here the diagram with an overview layout based on clinical definition associated with COVID-19. The clinical syndromes would help determine whether a patient suspected of COVID-19 case is considered mild or moderate or severe. That includes some critical patients too. In this diagram, the different colors represents different zones of the SARI treatment center with specific functions in each zone. The next series of slides highlights key elements of a SARI treatment center. This first part starts with where patients would enter from to the waiting room. Triage and room for taking samples are located in this area. Here you have the mild or moderate zone for observation and/or just for a short stay. A ward for severe cases. Critical cases would be treated in this ward. Staff working in the facility would enter from this area, with facility to change to working suits. But also on the middle, you will notice the laboratory, which is accessed from here too. Any SARI facility should have a zone for managing waste, as well as a mortuary too. Patients categorized by medical severity are thus mild or moderate, severe or critical, and are physically separated from each other. This categorization by severity means that each ward has its specific case management, as uncomplicated illness that would require a short stay and later could as well be managed at a local or community facility. Severe pneumonia cases, severe pneumonia cases requiring oxygen, and also critical case ward with ventilation installation from which to manage patients, as well as different IPC measures as droplet and contact precautions in moderate case ward, airborne and contact precautions in the severe and critical case wards. From a structural point of view, wards have different types of ventilation. natural ventilation is for the short-stay spatial separation ward. Ventilation of 160 liters per second per patient for severe cases in ward or individual self-contained room, and ventilation of at least 160 liters per second per patient for critical cases in the individual self-contained room. Now let's see the patient's flow. 1. The patient entry. At this point, all patients should receive a mask, wash their hands, and are directed to a dedicated individual booth in the waiting room. Second, waiting room. A waiting room has several individual booths with separated entrances and exits. There are no doors fitted and allows good natural ventilation. The waiting room has dedicated toilets. Third, triage. Patients are investigated in individual triage booth with a 1 meter distance fence of about 1.2 meter high that separates patients from staff. This facility is open without doors, so it allows a proper natural ventilation and is equipped with dedicated toilets. Fourth, sampling. A sampling room has 4 individual booths with natural or hybrid ventilation. However, patients can only be tested if a doctor decides so. The patient's access in details should look like this image with different services. You see, number 1 is patient's entry. Number 2, the reception. This is where the patients perform hand hygiene and receive clear indication to move to a specific waiting booth. Number 3, waiting room. This should be individual waiting rooms. 4, patient's toilets. Number 5, this is the triage section. Number 6, these are the 4 individual sampling booths. Number 7, this is where ambulances can enter the facility from. 8, donning and doffing. Here is to put on and put off the PPE. Number 9 is a barrier. It should be 1.2 meter high, and this is to identify the patient's arrival area. Patients are moved to the short stay ward where distances and natural ventilation assure infection prevention and control standards. Patients can wait for a few hours for the laboratory results while receiving health promotion sessions and treatment. For discharge, if patients are tested negative, they can be referred to another health facility. However, if they have tested positive, the mild and moderate cases can be referred to the community facility for isolation and follow-up. A moderate case is only moved to the observation room in such a case where the medical department wants to keep him or her under observation for a few more hours. While severe cases are moved directly to the severe case ward, medical care will be provided as well as sample taken from the patient. There are individual self-contained rooms with hybrid ventilation in this ward. If tested negative, the patient will then be discharged through a dedicated discharge room. Critical cases are moved directly to the critical case ward where medical care will be provided and a sample taken. The ward has individual self-contained rooms with hybrid ventilation. However, if a critical case is tested negative, then the patient will be discharged through a dedicated discharge room. Patient's flow follows a certain logic. It is not unidirectional, as according to medical conditions, patients can be moved from one ward to another. For instance, if a moderate patient's condition deteriorates, the patient would be moved to the severe ward or to the critical ward. Likewise, a critical patient whose condition has improved can be moved to the severe ward and to the short stay ward. and to be finally discharged according to the discharge criteria. Here we will look in detail in the mild and moderate wards. Patients have at least 2 meters in between them. 1 meter as infection prevention and control measure and 1 meter to facilitate healthcare worker movement. And if you see at number 2, this is a single barrier of about 1.2 meter high. Although not mandatory, a double fence with 1 meter distance can be used to help visitors respect the spatial distance while visiting patients. Number 3 is a working area. This is only for staff. Number 4 is the place to remove working gear or the personal protective equipment. Number 5 are shelves where you can keep the personal protective equipment. Number 6 is the entrance for patients. And on number 7, only staff would enter from here. Number 8 is the discharge room pending patient's release. 9 are windows for ventilation. And 10 is the observation. Here we are going to look in detail in the flow of patients in the severe and critical wards. Number 1 is individual doffing room. On number 2 is an individual self-contained room with a terrace. 3 are toilets and showers per individual self-contained room. On number 4, you have the PPE shelves. 5 is the staff working area. 6, patient's entrance. Number 7 is the entrance for staff only. And finally, on number 8 is the space for cleaning and disinfecting equipment. On this diagram, we are going to look at the staff flow. First, staff entry. Staff at this point will receive a mask, they will wash their hands, have their temperature checked, and record their presence. Number 2 are changing rooms. There are changing rooms for male and female to remove personal clothes and wear scrubs and boots or closed shoes. Staff toilets are situated nearby. Third, triage. Staff would check on patients in the individual triage booth. A 1 meter distance fence of 1.2 meter high separates patients from staff. The facility is completely open, so no doors, to allow a proper natural ventilation. Number 4 is a triage donning and doffing place. Staff can wear specific personal protective equipment before going to meet patients at the triage. 5 is the staff area in the wards. Each ward has a functional working space for staff where patients are not allowed. You will get more information in the next chapter. On this image, it shows a facility with transparent surfaces. On the left is an outside view of the facility, and on your right is a facility from inside. A treatment center with transparent surfaces have improved case management, but also the relationship between patient and the medical personnel in the sense that there is the visual contact with the patient without need of personal protective equipment. The biomedical devices can be placed on the staff side, such as the monitor, oxygen, or the IV. Flexible and uniform technical plateau for all rooms as biomedical devices can be moved. It is humanized care as there is interaction between patient and clinicians or the medical personnel. There is a huge reduction of entrance in the patient's area. Thereby, there is a considerable reduction of personal protective equipment use. Welcome to Module 2C, SARI Treatment Center in Tents. Small tents of about 45 square meters can be used to set up wards for mild and moderate cases by installing individual booths with beds in it. You can set up a toilet close but outside the tent. For severe and critical patients, private rooms together with private toilets are recommended. This layout is an example of a staff's entrance with small tents of about 45 square meters and the different zones for the temperature screening, toilet, the changing room, reception, the office, but also the logistics warehouse. And on this last slide, you have an overview layout of a SARI treatment center in tents. It follows same logic, so you need to have all the zones, like 1, the staff area, 2, triage area, 3, the short stay, 4, the moderate ward, and 5, for the severe cases.